Titus 1 verses 1 to 2 say this: Paul, a servant of God and an apostle of Jesus Christ, for the sake of the faith of God's elect and their knowledge of the truth, which accords with godliness, in hope of eternal life, which God, who never lies, promised before the ages began. We live in a world where it's very difficult to know who or what to trust. Your social media feed and TV are constantly filled with people telling you about get-rich-quick schemes and how to lose 10 pounds in 10 days. In fact, even just before you started watching this YouTube video, you were perhaps shown an advertisement of someone trying to get you to buy their product or download their app, which will help change your life. Every time you turn on the news, you'll hear of another politician trying to sell you their policy and their procedures, which will help society flourish like never before. We all find ourselves asking the question, who can I really trust? Most of us, if we're totally honest, have become more than a little pessimistic about any truth claim because we're so used to being lied to. We're so used to hearing many fake claims and empty promises. It sometimes feels like we're just surrounded by a culture of lies. Well, the Cretans who Paul was writing to lived in a culture much like ours. They lived in a culture which was well known for spreading fake news and telling lies. In fact, later on in Titus chapter 1 verse 12, Paul quotes a really well-known poet in the 7th century BC. He had a really well-known saying that you can see in verse 12, and it's this: all Cretans are liars, evil brutes, and lazy gluttons. In fact, the Greek gods who these Cretans would have grown up with and become accustomed with, they too were manipulative. They too were known for spreading lies to try and coerce people into worshipping them. As a result, the Cretans were, much like us, very pessimistic about any sort of truth claim, especially when it came to God. This is why Paul, as he begins this letter, inserts that little phrase in verse 2 that says this: God does not lie. Paul wants his readers to be extremely clear that the God of the Bible is one who can be trusted. He isn't like the Greek gods who the Cretans had become familiar with. He isn't like the manipulative salesman that you see on your web pages and your TV screens. This is a God who can be trusted. Isn't that the message we see the whole way through the Bible, particularly the Old Testament? We see countless examples of God's own people disobeying Him, running from Him. In fact, it was God Himself who was the victim of people making false promises to Him. However, through all the history of the Old Testament, in spite of all the ways that God has been lied about and lied to, He remained 100% faithful. Never once did God lie or go against His word. As you think about the day ahead, take confidence in the fact that in spite of the many lies and half-truths that you'll hear, some of which may seem very personal and hurtful to you, take heart in the fact that we serve a God who is always faithful and can be completely trusted. He's the God who never, ever lies.